Welcome back. This year marks 20 years since Mukesh Ambani took over the reins at Reliance Industries, and under him, we've seen the company transform, expand its oil business and get into so many new businesses like telecom, retail, new energy. We've been discussing the transformation of Reliance Industries, the great heights Reliance Industries stock price, the company, its financials have soared too. And to continue the conversation, we're now joined by Prakash Diwan. He's also been watching Reliance Industry financials for how long now? Prakash, how many years since you've been tracking Reliance?
I think as long as I remember making some sense of balance sheets, I think Reliance was the first company that we started working on. And in fact, my career started with Reliance from the campus. I was part of the RPPL, RPEL projects from the campus. We were recruited. It used to be called Ilu Pilu at that point in time, very fondly by retail investors. So it's been a long journey, yes, with Reliance, not just on the capital market side, but even as a company. I also had the privilege of working on some of their AGMs at Boti Khawdi in Jamnagar, in 95, 96. I remember 2 years that I was part of that on the R&D side. So yeah, it's been a great journey, learning from them, getting inspired, and then of course tracking them very closely.
Okay, Prakash, good morning. Must be a nightmare to value a company like this, right? Because like Manish was saying, this is like trying to find a market price for the Tata Group, because it is so many companies. How did that feel? I mean, you must be undergoing that nightmare even right now.
Oh, absolutely, Lata. So, what is happening now for the last 5 years, ever since Jio came into the picture, earlier it was much simpler, as all of us know. But after Jio, every quarter, there's something incrementally changing in the face of the business, in the texture of the P&L. And now it's in fact much more complex with so many of these acquisitions which are still not in the public domain in terms of having discovered values. For example, the Metro acquisition. I mean, you only know what they paid for it and at what EV they have bought it. But when it comes to valuations, all of that gets clubbed very wrongly. So in terms of other activities, but the core business is something which you do, and that's why earlier, if you recall, when we used to discuss Reliance numbers, it was with just one analyst from your side, one team from your team. Now it's 4 of us, 5 of us who are doing it. It's Sonia, Rima, Sonal, everybody who's got to pitch in, and that's the complexity. It's no more an oil and gas play. It's in certain quarters, it's kind of so starkly retail, so starkly telecom that you just can't ignore that. So it is complex. But what's changed also simultaneously is the way the business is growing and evolving, Lata. It has given all of us a huge chance to understand those businesses right from inception, for particularly telecom. It's thanks to Jio that we've started understanding telecom so well, because we've seen it right from the start when it took off, and then every year it kind of kept on morphing into this mega consumer business that it is now. So yeah, I mean it's complex, but it's interesting. And it's always a challenge to be able to do that right and in time every time the quarterly numbers are out.
Okay, and Reliance is also well regarded for setting a very high standard of corporate governance, right? I mean, we all know that last year in 2021, they underwent this whole corporatization of different entities. Yeah. Each entity was created with their core strength, with professionals, in order to perhaps attract investors, attract alliances. And that's a big, big green flag for shareholders, maintaining such a high level of corporate governance. Prakash, do you reckon that Reliance could continue to enjoy the premium that it does in the market because of decisions like these, where they of course not only put a great succession plan in place last year, but corporatization of different verticals, which sort of set a high standard of corporate governance for them?
Oh, absolutely, Sonia. So what in fact, it's not just continuity of that premium valuation that gets accorded to such clarity and such well-governed corporate structures. But the time of the pandemic, when the fundraise happened from some of the best-in-class marquee investors for businesses that were yet to start turning cash positive or profitable in a big way, was precisely the answer to this question, saying the world looks at Reliance as the benchmark for what a large, meaningfully large corporate in India would do to make itself at par or probably superior to a lot of global standards. In fact, when you look at Reliance from outside, and when you talk to people who look at Reliance from the outside world, it's so simple. They don't recognize a lot of the companies because of size and scale not being optimal. Here's a company, a business that's absolutely aligned with what is long-term investing all about. I mean, any of the businesses, if you see, comes with that with a very clear timeline, which is 9 years, 10 years, 12 years from now. I mean, there's nothing which is going to happen overnight. And to be able to maintain that kind of confidence, you need great corporate structure. You need very well governed corporate structure. So I think the corporate governance is it goes hand in hand if you have to scale up and attract global capital of this nature. And then in times of crisis when capital was scarce, that's exactly when Reliance actually got the biggest chunk of its capital play in the recent years. So you're absolutely right. That is something which will continue to not only draw premium, but will probably set the tone for the next few businesses, which could probably be spun off at some stage. I'm not sure when that happens. We're not aware of the timeline. But at some point in time, that will start making a big difference when some of these businesses will independently be going for listing. And then that's where all these structures will start getting priced into that premium valuation that you mentioned.
David Chokshi of KR Chokshi is also with us. And David, I think we've been talking about, I think on the air, we've been talking about Reliance at least from 2004, maybe 2005. So you're a veteran, Reliance sort of analyst veteran. We're looking back, of course, at the journey as Prakash was also talking about it, but also trying to look forward. In your opinion, for shareholders, what from here? What do you think is going to be the top trigger which unlocks further value?
Hi, Prashant. Good to have on this particular discussion with you all. I believe that I think if you look back into the past and quickly, I think take the cue out of that for the future. Every 7 or 8 years, I think they have launched new businesses, and I think they start from the petrochemical, and thereafter, I think getting into the oil and gas exploration, even retailing business, and I think the geo business platform, refining business included. I think each of these businesses, I think they would take longer time to, I think, construct. And essentially, they are not the new businesses. They are already existing businesses, which I would think that I think this company has developed the habit of Indianize those businesses. They would probably, I think, create the larger scale, looking at the size of the country, looking at the population, and create, I think, a profitable venture out of it. If that particular thing is something called as a cue for the next round of growth that they're talking about, already something which is already launched is a renewable segment of the business, wherein we are going to see the renewable materials, we are going to see the storage business, I think, which is coming up. And that is where probably I think the company is going to unfold larger part of the story. If $75 million investment commitment that they have already announced, I would rather like to believe that I think by the time they end up completing this particular project, the size of the investment would be far larger. And maybe I think taking care of the next round of growth that probably would be required. So in my viewpoint, I think renewable would be the first thing which will get launched probably in 2024. And subsequently followed by which I think the infrastructure and the defense play, which would be, I think, forming the larger part of the growth engine, which probably this company would launch eventually for the next round of, I think, next 10 years or so. Because India has already made an announcement, Prime Minister has already made an announcement of 110 lakh crore worth of investment in infrastructure. And that's where probably I think the larger amount of infrastructure related stories will get unfolded in subsequent years. And that's where I believe that the Reliance could possibly lead the direction there too, along with the defense area. So in my viewpoint, I think the future rounds will come from the renewables, storage, infrastructure and defense, if I have to summarize in this order.
Okay. Deven, I'm giving you 2 questions. Normally people give a question and multiple answers to choose. I'm going to give you 2 questions. Great if you can answer both. One, what do you think will be the market cap of Reliance in, say, 2030? And secondly, what percentage of your portfolio should be Reliance? Because it's not one company, you know, as we've all been saying, it's at least 6 companies.
So, Lata, great to have these questions from you. Well, I think the second question probably I think is relatively more easier for me to answer. So I think I would go with that. Comfortable to I think keep 15% and above kind of an exposure into the portfolio from Reliance. I think largely the point is that I think if one company is talking of growing the size of the profit every 3 years or 3.5 years, then in such situation, I think it should be, I think, a meaningful exposure in your portfolio. Currently, 1,30,000 crore worth of EBITDA expected in FY23 would be somewhere around 2,75,000, 2,80,000 crores, I think 3.5, 4 years from now. So if that is so, then I think it is making sense to keep, I think, a larger part of the exposure into this particular stock, because you are basically getting the opportunity to double the size of your portfolio in next 3.5 year time. So that is an easy answer. Maybe by 2030, you might see, I think, this particular profit with similar kind of capital expansion that they've been doing in the renewables and the storage could possibly reach in the direction of around 7.5 lakh to 8 lakh crores EBITDA, I think, by 2030. So that is, again, I think, giving you an opportunity to multiply your investment as much, I think, in next 7-8 years thereafter. As far as I think the first part of the question, sorry, I forgot. I think
the overall market cap. How much can your best guess be by 2030?
Well, I think very simply put, I think every 3.5 years, 4 years, I think we'll see the doubling of the market cap from now.
Okay. I thought doubling by 2030 would be your answer. That is even more optimistic.
Devin, you said that every 6 to 7 years, we've seen Reliance come out with a new business or scale up their existing business. So in the next, say, 5 years, right, because new energy has been in the works for the last 2 years, which business do you think they could be targeting, looking to scale up, where they have a footprint right now, but not big enough? What could be the new growth area for Reliance Industries, in your opinion?
So I think, as I said, the renewable story is just unfolding. I think, like in case of Jio, when initially I think they had committed to invest about 1 lakh of crores of rupees, which subsequently they ended up investing somewhere around 3.5 lakh crores. I think the similar kind of thing could happen in the area of renewables and the storage. I think that probably I would not be surprised if that number goes up significantly. And renewable, according to me, at the start, I think it is this particular investment that they're talking about. Somewhere in 2024-25, when they would probably complete the first round of launch into the renewables area of activity, already I think they would have created significantly large amount of base for taking the next round of expansion. So that figure something which we'll have to wait and see how exactly it comes. But in my understanding, suppose if you are investing 6-7 lakh crores of rupees in this particular area of business, I think once the commercial production start, your payback period should be somewhere around 3 years, 3.5 years, because of the large size project. So obviously, I think if this is the kind of money that they are going to get the payback, significant amount of next round of investment can be expected. I think that would be upwards of $125 billion in subsequent period. And that area could be, I think, connected with infrastructure. That area could be connected with defense. Lot of, I think, the technology-based innovations and the disruptions are also happening in the universe. I would think that I think this is going to be the cue as far as I think the infrastructure and defense is concerned, in which probably larger sum of money would be invested, I think, with a higher amount of technology play at the back.
Well, that's interesting. Devin, Prakash, as we look forward, another thing which I think people are going to keenly watch, and I was making this point with Manish, right? I mean, they've got top people, very capable people, and there's management depth at each of these businesses. But there is also now, a broad sense of, how this, in terms of succession, is going to go forward, right? Something you're watching carefully?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for businesses that which have such a lot of capital outlay riding on the execution part, it's very important in terms of who's actually going to be driving the business. So succession definitely comes in handy. And, recently when we saw the 5G launch and the way we saw Mr. Mukesh Ambani actually letting the next generation lead the way, right from the time the Prime Minister was oriented to the new products and the new service. It was so first-hand. I mean, in terms of there's no more just an intent. It's actually a lot of content that you're seeing on the ground in that succession happening. So I think key decision-making, the team-building process, acquisition of newer talent, all of that is happening with the next gen in the driving seat to a large extent from what I can make out and read. So it's important for these businesses that succession not only is announced and put into action, but it actually starts delivering. And that's exactly what we are seeing, whether it's on retail, whether it's on telecom. And I'm sure the new energy business, when it comes, the right time comes, you'll probably start seeing some alignment happen out there too. So, it's in financial capital, intellectual capital, human capital, all of that converging at the right time. And succession is all about putting those missing blocks, those building blocks into place. And it's happening. So you will have to watch that carefully for sure. And I'm sure there's much more to come as far as that element is concerned for this large business house.
Okay, we've spoken about all the positives, right? But to every business, there is some of the other risk. From an investor standpoint, Deven, what is the biggest risk you see to Reliance's growth?
So far, I think the Reliance has been extremely successful in delivering some of the larger projects, and that too in a very precise timeline, and at the most very competitive cost. They have been extremely successful. They have been ahead of the curve as far as their launch of the business is concerned. This could itself, I think, be a bigger challenge going forward when you scale it up. Because larger the scale, larger the requirement of implementation. And at that point of time, any kind of miss on this particular subject would invite, I think, some amount of risk, that is for sure. So that is broadly generalized. However, I think as I see it in every new generation of business, I think one big underlying risk which continues is the risk of disruption. Earlier days, I think you would have about 7-8 years cycle in the business, after which I think the business would take a change and probably get into the newer mode. Today, I think that cycle time has reduced to around 3.5-4 years. And I think every 3.5-4 years, I think the businesses are required to reinvent themselves. With the kind of disruption with the technology that we are continuously seeing, I'm not surprised if I think by the time you launch your business, I think already the business model is required to be changed. And this could cause a larger risk going forward. So how smartly you execute this particular proposition, given the kind of risk that you are assuming, I think is going to be the key success going forward. And that's where I think probably successful companies like Reliance will have to lead the path and demonstrate how exactly they will beat these kind of challenges as far as I think the disruption in the business model is concerned.
All right. Well put. Thank you very much, Deven. Thank you, Prakash, for joining us as we take stock and look ahead. Thank you very much indeed. Sonia has walked across back again to the big wall to get us a check on what the future may hold for Reliance Industries. Sonia, back to you.
Well, the last 2 decades have been full of milestones for Reliance, right? So we decided to look ahead to the future. Reliance is committed to investing 75,000 crores in the next 3 years in its new energy businesses, aiming to become the world's lowest cost producer of solar energy and green hydrogen. Reliance will be setting up 5 integrated gigafactories at Jamnagar to emerge as the world's lowest cost producer of solar and green hydrogen. Well, the plan is to become net carbon neutral by 2035. And Reliance will also be starting 10 gigawatts of solar PV cells and module factories by 2024. That will be scaled up to 20 gigawatts by 2026. It was also under the leadership of Mukesh Ambani that Reliance set a record of capital fundraising in FY21. It raised more than 2.5 lakh crores through the rights issue and minority stake sales in Jio Platform and Reliance Retail Ventures to global marquee investors. Now, during FY21, Reliance was the single largest FDI generator for India at a time when most businesses were just struggling to survive. Finally, let's wrap this up with Reliance Industries' commitment to corporate social responsibility. The Reliance Foundation was set up way back in 2010 with Nita Ambani at the helm, and that has so far touched more than 6.3 crore lives and is India's biggest CSR initiative both by reach and by spend.
Okay, Sonia, thank you very much for that. With that, it's a wrap on this special show. Thank you very much for watching.